listening to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. This is episode 150 of Range Minded, where we talk about what to look for in used firearms. There's a lot of great deals to be had in the used firearms market, even in our current climate, but you have to know what to look for. Thanks for listening, and as always, we hope you enjoy episode 150 of Range Minded, the things to look for when buying a used firearm. Hello and welcome to Range Minded from Independence Indoor Shooting. My name is Mark Long, and I am joined as always by...
What's up, my fellow gun lovers? This is Steve from Rigby.
Yes, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I'm doing really good, actually.
Did you get any snow over there?
Not in the last week. It's been really nice, actually. Today it was like 50-something degrees. It was beautiful.
Well, because as we speak, apparently that there is a ton of snow being dumped on like half of the country.
Well, let's now that you say that, watch, it's probably going to like snow a lot tomorrow or something.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we are supposed to get snow next weekend.
Are we?
Looks like.
Or are you? Maybe you are. I don't know. It was 65 degrees here today, so I was happy about that.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty gray out there right now.
Yeah, a little bit, but yeah, I was stoked to be out on the motorcycle today, believe it or not.
Oh, did you go riding?
Yeah,
nice.
it was a great day. It was a little chilly up once you got up higher in the elevation, but other than that, it wasn't too bad. So,
where'd you ride?
I went through downtown Boise, and then there is a road called Cartwright Road that takes you kind of up through the foothills on the north end of the foothills, and then from there I headed back into town and went home. It's actually a really fun little ride. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was a great day. So I know in Colorado they're getting like 3 feet of snow right now, or they've had 3 feet of snow, but I was enjoying my motorcycle ride today. So go figure.
Well, it's Colorado. What do you do?
That's true. So, but we're not talking about weather and motorcycles today. We're talking about used guns and everything that goes on around it.
Basically the same thing.
Yeah. It's about as crazy and unpredictable, I guess you could draw that kind of similarity, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and I feel terrible, Steve. We forgot.
Well, I didn't forget. I knew we had somebody else with us.
You didn't stop me and say that Nick Hoffer is also with us as well. Say hi, Nick.
Oh man, you guys had me confused. I was like, wait, who's with us? Yes, I am. I'm here.
How are you,
Nick
sir?
Hoffer is in the house. I am doing great. A little bit of a headache tonight, but other than that, I feel great.
Well, that happens.
That's why he was confused, is because he's not feeling 100% Nick Hoffer.
I'm not on the top of my game tonight.
Yeah, right. That's okay. We'll try to muddle through. So
we'll get him heated up, and he'll be just fine.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we'll be okay.
So
I got my Sharpie out. I've been looking up some stuff for this discussion, and it's going to be good.
Cool. Yeah. Well, so we're talking used guns, and then we're going to kind of piggyback off of that because we figure might as well talk about used guns while you can still buy used guns and buy private party, because that may not be the case in the near future.
Yes, very soon.
So, so let's just dive right into it. Do we want to talk about the current events kind of that are happening first, or do we want to talk about used guns?
Well,
go ahead. What do you think, Nick?
I think Steve should explain to us why we want to talk about used guns and what happened this week.
Okay. So I'm a Debbie Downer, right? So inside baseball, Steve likes to text Nick and Mark, and sometimes when I do text, it's not the happiest information,
but it's interesting reading nonetheless.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting reading. So one of our favorite politicians, Dianne Feinstein, on Thursday or Friday, she decided that she was going to live up to her legacy and do an assault weapons ban 2.0. Now, she is ignominiously remembered for her 1994 weapons ban under Bill Clinton. And I think they probably learned a lot from that ban of things not to do or to do different. And that will be included in this upcoming ban, including no private sales without a background check. And we can go into a little bit deeper about that too later if you want. magazine capacity ban. I'm still a little hazy on what her AR-15 ban is going to include, if it's confiscation or if it's no future sales. My guess, it's going to have something to do with registration and confiscation if you get delinquent on your registration. So yeah, pretty poopy news, honestly. But nothing that we didn't really anticipate that was coming down the pike.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you go back to the election and stuff, I mean, that was they
promised.
That was a platform. I mean, that's been kind of out in the open the whole time. So like you said, it's not a surprise or anything like that, but it still doesn't make it any better to hear about that it actually was introduced into Congress.
Now, and I'm kind of confused. Dianne Feinstein, she's got to be like 800 years old.
I remember the whole election cycle, people telling me that they were not coming for my guns.
Other than Beto, hell yeah, we're going to take your AR-15.
Well, yeah, but they weren't going to do that. That was just something that they said.
No, they just wanted some common sense reform.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually had forgotten all about Feinstein because I was too caught up with the other ancient skeletons that hold office.
But seriously, did Keith Richards share his stash with her or something? Because I'm pretty sure she was there at the Declaration signing.
Oh, she might have been. But yeah, no, I think it's every year she tries to introduce something like that.
Yeah, every year. And now because they have the majority and they're talking about getting rid of the filibuster, which literally is our only defense left, is the filibuster, because I don't have a lot of faith with some of our Republican representation. They voted for this bill that just recently passed. We had, nine Republicans support it?
I'd be happy to name off the 8 of them that supported it and the 1 that didn't vote.
Yeah, that's pretty cowardice, man. That is turncoat at its finest.
I mean, you have one job, and that's to place a vote, yay or nay. And if you don't do that, you shouldn't be in office.
Well, and I'm sure they only did that because it gives them an escape hatch. I didn't vote for the bill. I voted absent.
Yeah, it could be. It very well could be. But yeah, I mean, it's a little different now this go around because, there might be some more support for it and there might be some less chance for compromise or anything like that. So that's kind of why we want to talk about it. You may have
noticed, and sorry, Mark, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No,
and you may have noticed in the news cycle, they're starting to talk again about shootings, right? Oh, so-and-so with a gun killed this many people. And you're going to see that start to really ramp up. I would really believe it's going to start being pretty prevalent this week and maybe next week as well, because they have to create a narrative. Now, we've talked about it before. Over 3 million times a year, guns are used to save lives. So they don't talk about that part. They just talk about some wacko going and murdering, which I'm pretty sure is illegal, people, and then using the gun to commit murder. So
yeah, that's the thing, is that the defensive gun uses really aren't talked about all that often. I mean, because they either aren't reported or that there's not a crime that happens, so it's not really newsworthy, So that's kind of the I guess the reasoning maybe behind that. But yeah, I mean, you're going to hear about gun violence in the news maybe a little bit more, especially just as it's in the zeitgeist and people are thinking about it as this law might be passed. So, and now, to be fair, there are, some, it's got to go through the whole process, and it might change. It might not. There may be some different provisions or something. I really don't know, but just as it's introduced now, there's a lot in it that could not be good for gun owners. So,
yeah, I do not have a lot of hope, that it's going to turn out the way we want it to turn out.
Well, at least that's very on brand for you, if nothing else.
Which I'm not a negative guy. I feel like I'm a realist.
Sure.
And just the way we see the world right now is not friendly.
Well, I think you hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. I think that's how it goes. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
But yeah, so it's just it's kind of an unsure situation, and let's kind of go to the first part that you were talking about with backgrounds with private gun sales. I know we've talked about it before, but with as of right now, you don't need a background check if you're doing a private sale. And we actually talked about that pretty significantly in the last episode or the episode before that, where it's dependent from state to state, and then it's also the onus is really on the buyer instead of the seller.
Yeah,
at least in the state of Idaho. So,
well, and however I want to go with this. So background checks were done, honestly, with Republican support. It was done, and maybe with good intentions, to keep people that shouldn't be having guns, keep them out of their hands. And I would say, for the most part, it's been a success. There's always going to be somebody that games the system, and buys a gun for somebody they're not supposed to, or lies on the form with fake ID or whatever. That's going to happen. It happens no matter what. It happens with kids buying booze at the liquor store, right?
Right.
It happens. But the provision to allow private sales to happen, I think, was done in wisdom. Like, I don't think it was, oh, whoops, we forgot to put that in there. Because it's not the government's job to get into the private, a private party sale. That's not the government's job. And it's none of their business. What I sell to my friend, unless it's a controlled substance or whatever, that's a different story. Right. Now you might say, well, guns are a controlled substance, but they're also a protected right. It's just like if I wanted to sell my car to Mark, I'm not going to go through a dealer who's going to take a chunk of what I'm asking and put it in his own pocket.
Right. I can just cut you a check or give you some cash, and I drive away in the car, and everything's done. Yeah. Or with anything for that matter.
The simple explanation of what HR8 is to use exactly what you just said. And it's anytime you wanted to sell your car, you would have to go through the dealership and have them approve your sale to Mark.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it would have to be some authorized person. And I would really like to see the meat and potatoes of this bill, honestly. And I haven't tried to research the content. I would not be surprised if there's some really harsh penalties to dealers too. Like there's some changes in the FFL laws. I would not be surprised.
Really? Yeah.
I can't say that's for sure. Like I just said, I haven't read the bill. I just would not be surprised if there's some changes to the FFL holders.
Yeah. Either way, any way you slice it, whether, you read it or not, there's not, you can kind of grab the headlines and realize that there's kind of some things that work against, lawful gun owners, unfortunately. And, you've got to kind of work with your local gun rights organizations and your national gun rights organizations to kind of, make sure that you can, make sure that your voice is heard,
Yeah, there was a customer that, and I'm glad we're talking about this because we really weren't going to go down this exact rabbit hole, but there was a customer that asked, well, what's the big deal about extending background checks? And that's really not the substance of this bill. And it's not just about private sales. It's not me selling a Glock to Mark or a Glock to Nick. It's about me. Nick wants to go hunting and he doesn't have a particular AR-15 or whatever. And I say, here, take mine. Well, guess what? We have to go through a background check to lend a gun. That's what this is. We have to go to a background check for me to get my gun back. What it's doing is it's creating a paper trail of who has what and where it is at that moment.
Yeah. And it makes it also, kind of, what's the word? Not prohibited, but like kind of complicated and like to an irritating point of deterring, either loaning or selling firearms, private party.
Yeah. And then what happens if my dad dies and I get his guns, but there was no background check done because I inherited them? Well, does that mean I'm in violation of federal law now?
Yeah, there's a lot of instances where things aren't necessarily as clear cut as they seem.
And I think that's done on purpose.
Could be. So, but that's kind of why we wanted to talk about used firearms, because as of right now and as of this recording, there's no penalty or problem with buying firearms private party or buying used guns, from somebody so we wanted to kind of inform you and let you know what the deal with that is, and make sure you kind of get a good deal, because it might be wise to get a used gun if you've been looking at one, or any firearm, while you have the chance, kind of,
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we're at with that. So let's dive into it. Obviously, if you are, there's a couple of pros, I think, to looking for and being in the market for a used firearm. And one is that you're going to pay, a little bit less to significantly less for a used firearm than you would a brand new firearm.
Yeah.
A used Glock is going to go for a lot less than a brand new one out of the box.
Yeah, which is still gone up. If you haven't bought a gun in a while, you're may have some sticker shock.
Yeah.
But most people's fear when it comes to buying a used gun is they're going to buy something that's worn out, that's broken, that there's some serious issues with it. In my experience, and I've seen a lot of junk guns come through. It's definitely happens. But on the dealer side, if we see something that's not going to sell, we're not going to buy it for the first part.
Right.
And then we'll take it in. We'll let Jeff and Dakota look at it. And then sometimes maybe we'll take a couple of rounds, go into the range and do a function check or whatever. I can't talk for all gun stores out there, but I know for independents, we try to do the best that we can to offer the safest products to our customers. And I think most gun stores are going to do that because they don't want to get a stigma of selling some junk. Most modern guns, they're pretty resilient. They're just going to function. A Glock, a Springfield, a Smith, a striker fire, you can put a lot of rounds through them before there's an issue. A lot.
Yeah.
I know over here at the DOE site here at the INL, only because I know some of the people out there actually running some of the Glocks they used to have. They had a 40 caliber Glock out there that had like 500,000 rounds through it.
Wow.
That was one of their trainers, and it was still going. So most people aren't going to shoot the crap or the guts out of their guns. What you're going to see most likely is rusting or pitting, or damage to the stocks.
Right.
That's probably the most common. And sometimes that's not even a big deal.
No, I mean, the other thing that I think a lot of people don't think about is that there's a lot of interchangeable parts. If the deal's right enough, it might be worth it to get a new barrel or a new trigger group or, parts that you can use to bring that gun back up to snuff. It just depends on, what the condition, I guess, overall of it is. And, from long guns, an AR-15 specifically to, handguns and stuff. I mean, there's a lot of parts that you can you can get and replace, and it'll make it almost like a brand new gun. And I would say the other thing I think that you see a lot is dirty guns. People don't necessarily clean their guns or know how to clean their guns before they decide to sell them. So it might look worse than it actually is.
Yeah, I picked up an AR-15 and I think I told the story before a long time ago, that it was in terrible shape on the outside. There was a lot of surface rust. The gun was filthy, but this kid wanted to sell the gun. Like, he wanted to get rid of it.
Right.
So I picked up an AR for like $300.
Yeah, and the price is right.
And the price was very right. And all I did was I took a silicone cloth, rubbed it down. The rust was gone. I pulled apart the bolt and put new gas rings on it, and she runs like a champ. Yeah,
and you were only in for $300.
Well, like $308 with the rings.
Yeah, so that's I would say that's a hell of a deal. So, you can find some really good deals, especially if people just don't want their firearms anymore.
Yeah,
you have the opportunity to get those at a heck of a price.
Yeah,
Nick, what do you think?
I'm still blown away that Steve bought an AR for $300, no matter or what condition it was in, but
well, I guess that was maybe
it was a deal.
The good old days.
It was a few years ago, but it wasn't that long ago.
I think that buying a used gun, I mean, we've done a pretty in-depth talks about what to look for in your first gun, and kind of talked about used guns when we talked about that as well. But I think it's, I don't know. I don't know that there's really a stigma about used guns, because I think most people who are buying used guns either have a pretty good knowledge of guns or they know nothing about guns. And so they might be, they're either buying good guns or they're buying guns they know nothing about.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. But yeah, I mean, it's
how many?
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, how many used high points get sold for more than $100? Quite a few.
More than what they paid for them.
Yeah, that's very true. But sometimes maybe that's the only gun that some people can afford. And, like we've talked about, I mean, if the demand is there, it just might be the way it is,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there really is, like Steve said, and like Nick, you just mentioned too, is that there really is no, as long as you kind of know what to look for, and that, you're getting a used gun, and you can maybe get some new parts, or it may take some extra, love and care or whatever, that you can really, get a good gun for a good deal, especially nowadays. A modern firearm can last a long time, and, with the right care, even if it's been abused a little bit, I would say you're still able to really get a lot of use and a lot of life out of it.
Yeah. And so my look on used guns is kind of like this. Like I buy and sell and trade things all the time, right? So cars, motorcycles, guns, fishing poles. Like if there's something that I like, I probably buy, sell, and trade it all the time. And as far as guns go, it's no different. I would rather privately trade and sell guns because I can get a better deal. Because just like we talked about with selling a car at a dealership, I don't have to go in and have a middleman. I can take my deal, i.e. my firearm or trade, directly to the person that's looking for it, and get something that they have that I want.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because you're kind of doing the work of what that middleman would be doing. So you've kind of got that working for you, I suppose. And
and you're cutting the cost. So the seller has a little bit higher profit, and the purchaser has a little lower cost. And it really is it's a better deal all the way around. Yeah. Normally there are gougers out there that think that they'll buy in a hype and sell. When it gets crazy, usually they get stuck with guns that they shouldn't have bought.
But I think that also, being allowed to private party sell things and buy things used directly puts a cap on some of that gouging, because once you put the businesses in charge, and the only way that you can get something is through the business, at that point the minority of the sellers, which is the store, becomes in control of the cost. So that's part of why I like to go private party. When it comes to, if it comes to ammo right now, obviously I'll go to a store because I don't want to pay the price private party. But if I wanted to buy a used handgun, I'm going to try and go directly to the person who wants to get rid of it, because maybe like the kid you bought the gun from, he just wants to get rid of it and he doesn't understand the things that it takes to give it to the store, or he doesn't care. He's like, I just want $300.
Just want cash right now.
Gun, yeah. That same gun goes to the store. They pay $300, and then I have to pay $500, which is fine. $500 is still a good deal, but I could have got a better deal by going directly to the person who wanted to sell it. And I'm a licensed, I guess, firearms owner, so there's no risk with me like buying a gun from someone.
Sure. Well, that's I guess one of the things is that I think, Nick, like you said, you bring up a good point where it's a lot of people don't realize kind of what options they have, because if they are uncomfortable buying a firearm from a private party or something like that, or selling a firearm to a private party, you can go to a gun store and they'll usually consign something for you if they do that, or, you can work with like Gunbroker or things like that, where you have those options. And, I think a lot of people don't know that,
Yeah.
So.
Well, and we talked about this before too, was that if you get a weird feeling from somebody, don't sell them something. Don't sell them your car. Don't sell them your gun. Don't sell them anything if you get a weird feeling from somebody.
Sure.
Like if I'm selling a car and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just going to take this car and go drive through Boise State parking lot and see how many people I can hit." I'm like, "Yeah, no."
Yeah.
And I'm going to call the cops.
And for heaven's sake, if you don't know this already, don't have them come to your house to buy anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's actually, so that you bring up a good point there, Steve. Let's talk about and kind of walk through the whole process of maybe buying a used firearm from a private party, just in your guys' experience, talking about, from the, where to look initially to, how to meet up, all that kind of stuff. Let's talk about all that real quick.
Yeah, that's probably not a bad idea. So really, for me, when it comes to buying a used gun or getting a lead on a used gun, it just comes to talking to people on the range. Like if I'm at work in the gun counter or whatever, and I'm going to say this right now while we're at that, like I would never take away a sell from the store.
Sure. No, 100%.
Right? But if the store is not interested and I am, then I'll work a deal.
Has the world ever met a gun Steve was not interested in?
No.
Yes. I have met guns that I am not interested in.
But he bought them anyways.
I don't know if I believe that.
Maybe. Different story. But yeah, I'm going to communicate, I'm just going to talk to people, whether it's in the range or whatever. And maybe they're willing to part with it. Usually if I have to, convince them to sell it, then I'm going to be paying too much. But
sure.
if I let them do all the talking and then them talk themselves into selling it themselves, then I usually have a better chance of getting a good deal. But if I really want that gun and I make it manifest that I really want that gun, they're going to jack the price up. So
because they know you want it.
Yeah. So I guess first thing is don't be passionately connected to that firearm until it's in your possession.
Yeah, play it cool and all, I would say is and keep your emotions in check, because people can read that, and if they know you really, really want something, they're going to maybe stick to their guns and be able to get more money out of you than you were initially willing to pay for.
And be willing to walk, like be willing just to say no and let it go, because you'll probably have another opportunity at some point, unless we completely lose the Second Amendment. But that's a different story too.
Right. So
go ahead.
Here's something about a used firearm. So a used firearm is not necessarily the same as a car or a bicycle or a motorcycle, right? So guns, for some reason, you get people like Steve who get emotionally connected to.
I do.
These possessions, right? This handgun, this thing that is really an inanimate object, and really, if it didn't get passed down, or it could be something that got passed down, they get an attachment to it, right? And so what happens is these guys might want more than it's actually worth. So I always go into any used gun deal, even a new gun deal, in looking and seeing what is the thing worth.
Yep.
What am I willing to pay for it? What would I pay for it if me personally went to the store or the website or the manufacturer and bought it myself? Is it worth it is it an AR-15 that I would rather purchase than build if I know how to build it? And put all those variables together and know, okay, well, I have an idea what this is. I'm not willing to spend more than $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
That's perfect, because they only want $900. Or I don't want to spend more than $1,000. They want $1,200. I might be able to negotiate on it, but I definitely don't want it if it has to be $1,200.
Yeah, be willing to walk.
Yeah, don't get like you said, don't get attached before you even own the thing, and know why you're buying it. Are you buying it to resell it? Are you buying it to add to a collection? Are you buying it as something for your kids? Like, why are you buying it? Why do you need it? Why is it worth X dollars to you?
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point, is that, you have to kind of think about beforehand buying something rather than just kind of like impulse buying into a situation. Where think about what you need it for, what this, what this firearm's purpose is going to be and how it's going to serve you, and, kind of taking that accordingly in with, how much you're willing to pay for it, and knowing, ahead of time what your highest price to pay is going to be and what you're going to do to, get lower than that. But knowing that, okay, more than this, I'm going to walk and I'm not going to buy it. I think having that mindset and having that kind of preparation, knowing that it's just an inanimate object, like Nick said, is something that's wise to kind of have in mind before you get into this. So.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to know, and this goes from the selling standpoint and the buyer standpoint, just because you put a new trigger and a cool dust cover and a 4-angle grip or whatever, that does not necessarily increase the value of that firearm very much.
Yeah, 100% true. Yeah, usually accessories and all the custom stuff is not going to help. It's just like, like Nick's analogy of buying a car.
Exactly.
Custom wheels and rims or a custom paint job isn't necessarily going to
there's not a lot of dividends on the other end.
Right, exactly. Or if you've got a super cool stereo or whatever, it's not going to increase the money you're going to get. So but like I said, knowing what you're going to pay, what your max is before you get into it, what you're using it for, and knowing, at least that as of right now that there are going to be other opportunities to probably get that firearm are going to be, is something to keep in mind. Now, obviously, there are like super rare firearms, or, I think we've all got, purchases that maybe we wish we made that didn't happen and that we haven't been able to find either at that price or find even that firearm again, or just the price has gone up. So if you're after something like super specific that's like, on your bucket list or something, I think you can be a little bit more flexible about that. But, it really depends on the situation,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so I have a buddy that works in the firearms industry. He works for a large store. They have stores all over the country. And they have access to a warehouse full of used guns, basically. And so as he goes through to replenish the store's used inventory, sometimes he may just cherry pick some things for himself.
Sure. And that's a perk of being employed, I guess, there.
No, actually, I've never bought a gun there.
Is that the equivalent, Steve, to being a crack addict who also makes, like, meth?
Have you seen Breaking Bad? This is nothing.
I feel like
nothing like that.
I was like, this would be a bad news for you.
No, I really have never bought a gun from that retailer. I don't know why. I just haven't. He comes across some pretty awesome stuff.
So to touch on something that you guys were just talking about, the car thing. So I had this explanation to someone the other day that brought in an AR pistol that was in 45 ACP. Had a lot of really good parts in it. The guy had a ton of knowledge about the parts that he built into it. Really expensive. I mean, the guy wanted almost $3,000 for it.
Wow!
And the parts alone added up to like $3,200, right? And I had the discussion. Look, the person who would pay $3,200 for this is the person that knows exactly what every single part in this is. And they, if they wanted this exact setup, would most likely build it.
Yeah, they would put the time and effort into it themselves, yeah.
Well, they would most likely build it over time. If you found the right buyer, that exact person, at the exact right time, where they had all of that money sitting there ready to start that purchase, you would sell it right away. But a majority of the people who are going to see this and hear about this, or I'm going to tell this is available to, are going to see AR-15 in 45 ACP
with expensive parts
$2,500 out of my price range, not worth it.
Right.
That's exactly what that's just what's going to happen. It's like looking at a 2015 Chevy Duramax that has $10,000 worth of wheels and tires, and the guy's asking $35,000, and the truck's only worth $19,000. But it's got a lift. But it's got a lift kit, and I just put $10,000 worth of wheels and tires on it. Great, take them off. Not worth anymore.
Yeah, right? You can keep the wheels. I'll go my own way.
Because the very specific parts, wheels and tires, bolt carrier group, lower receiver, those are all preference parts.
Right.
Those are all things that in the large market, that's why you don't see the gun store building out $4,000 ARs, because they'll have some of the parts and they'll allow the customer to buy those and add them onto their gun, because no four people want the same exact $300 bolt carrier.
Yeah, they're vanity items. That's all they are.
Yeah, just
and then
I was just saying,
I get the people
just like a motorcycle where, people like for Harleys, for example, people customize them exactly to how they want, and it's their preference or whatever. But if you customize a motorcycle to your preferences, finding somebody that's going to want those exact preferences the exact same way you want is going to be like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why people buy a used Harley that has $20,000 worth of work done to it, and then they immediately go and buy $2,000 or $3,000 worth of different parts, pull some of those off of it, sell those on Craigslist, and put the stuff that they wanted on it.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, sir. So it's if you have all these custom parts on it and stuff, unless it's like super rare or whatever, even in that case, I don't think it's that big of a deal. You're not going to necessarily get that money back extra,
No. But an exception, like we mentioned already, would be for just like cars or motorbikes would be a classic, some kind of a classic firearm. That's the only exception. And in classic firearms, if they're being refinished wrong or something looks out of period, then you're going to hurt the value of that gun. Right.
Well, let's say that you do find something, that you like, whether it's maybe online or, through a community group, or Z Idaho or something like that, where you can sell firearms or private party list firearms online. Where do you go from there? What's the next step after that?
Wow.
Crickets. You go to their house and you find out their garage code and what time they go to bed and what kind of car they drive, how many kids they have.
Sounds perfect to me.
Is that not? Wait, what are we not talking about casing their house for the firearm that you want?
Maybe not the rest of us.
Maybe a select few.
I would say probably don't invite them to your house if you don't know them.
Yeah, if it's a stranger, obviously you want to meet in a public place.
I don't think Steve's ever been to my house.
No,
I haven't.
I mean, I know where you sleep, but I've never been there while you're awake.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Probably a good thing.
Yeah, I would say you want to, make sure that you're meeting in a public place or somewhere that is, safe for the both of you, just where in terms of, it's a safe place to do business. You can really do that kind of anywhere, it's, there's everybody I think has their preferences or has where they,
Let's really quick say where you cannot do that, because there are a few places that you cannot sell firearms.
Right. Like a school, for example.
Yes. One of those would be a school parking lot.
Or a hospital parking lot.
Correct. Or the Capitol parking lot, or City Hall, or the courthouse. None of those.
Any
places.
Federal property, I think.
Yeah, the post office. All of those places that have really big open parking lots, you can't use those.
Right, but you can use like a store parking lot, or another one that you don't want to do is probably going to be the like a post office parking lot. You probably want to avoid that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I say this, if you're going to meet in a parking lot, make sure that it's out, away from, like, out in the end of the parking lot. I mean, you are dealing with firearms, so you don't necessarily need a bunch of people around, and you don't need to make people nervous who don't need to be nervous about.
Right. Yeah.
Just be respectful to the fact that some people are uncomfortable around guns, and some people might think that you're doing something wrong even though you're not. And so not pushing it into their face is going to be in benefit to everybody.
Yeah, I think being discreet and having discretion is definitely something you want to keep at the top of your mind. But once you
it's frustrating to think that we have to act that way, but it's true. People are, especially this day and age, people are really uneasy about that kind of stuff going down. Not that we're doing anything illegal, because we are not. Just that we can respect people's wishes and feelings too. We don't have to, put it in their face. I put it this way when I talk to people. There's things that I'm not going to shove in other people's face, because there's things that I would appreciate them not to shove in my face. There's some conversations that I don't want to have with certain groups of people, and there's conversations that I'm not going to push onto other groups of people because I know that they don't want to have that conversation. Yeah.
So same thing goes. Realistically, a lot of times if you're going to sell someone a gun, you either know someone who knows that person or you know that person. So most of the times that I've ever done that, I've actually met them at my house when I lived in my house out in Cuna, because I was comfortable with it. If you're comfortable with it, that's fine.
Yeah.
But if you're not,
if it's a complete stranger,
it's a little different story. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think it kind of also goes back to, if you're not comfortable enough meeting that person out in your driveway, are you comfortable actually selling them a gun?
Yeah, sure. That's a fair point.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, let's talk about when you do actually get to that point and you've met up with somebody in a public place or someplace that you're comfortable being. If you're buying a gun, obviously you want to take a look at it and make sure it works. What's kind of the process that you guys have gone through in the past to check the gun out?
All right. Very first thing, step one, is you make sure that gun is unloaded.
Yep.
Very first step. Like, drop the magazine, lock the slide back, or open up the action and make sure there's nothing in there. I know that seems kind of trivial and very primary, but it's important to never forget those safety rules, right? So very first thing, check to make sure it's unloaded, and then ask them if it's okay if you can disassemble it. By looking at the inside of the guns, you can see if it's clean or if it's dirty. You can understand the maintenance habits of the owner. If they take care of the inside, then they've probably taken care of the gun since they've owned it. I've bought used guns that the guy's like, oh, I shot it a bunch, a Glock 17 that I got for a really good price. I pull it apart, and there's still that copper lubricant, that Glock factory copper lubricant inside the rails. So that immediately tells me that either A, he's buying expensive lubricant and he cares about his gun, or B, he shot it, maybe 2 magazines at it, never cleaned it, and decided he didn't want it. Both those are a win for me.
Yeah, for sure. Because like you said, that shows that they take either really good care of it or it really hasn't been shot a lot. And I mean, usually a gun that's been shot a lot is thousands and thousands of rounds. And you can usually tell if you could tell if you've been around guns enough, if a gun's been kind of broken in or not, and
if it's a semi-automatic, and maybe in your mind's eye, think, well, since we're talking the Glock that last time, just imagine a Glock, in your mind's eye, and think about the chamber. Now, the ejection port, the hood, the little part that the bullet goes into the chamber that exposes past the slide or out of the slide. Mm-hmm. That you get a lot of wear there when you shoot a gun, and obviously the more wear that's there, the more the gun has been used. So if you get a few scrapes, then it's been shot. If it's like sloppy, it doesn't lock up well, lots of scratches across that hood, then that gun has been used a lot. There's also a lot of barrel wear as that slide moves back and forth that you can see on the front of the barrel.
Right.
These are just telltale things that tell you, this gun has been used a lot. With an AR-15, obviously I look at the outside of the gun. If it's got lots of scratches and wear and tear on the outside, it doesn't necessarily mean it's been abused, but it's been used. Or it's been thrown in the back of a pickup truck or whatever. Same thing. Pull the gun apart. Look at the trigger mechanism. Look at the bolt face. Look at the firing pin. Like all those things give you an idea of what's gone down with that firearm.
Yeah. And I would say another thing to look at too is, magazines and how they kind of fit into the mag well, and you can maybe tell if those. Those springs have been worn out. That's another telltale sign. Yeah. I mean, and you can't, that's not necessarily a telltale sign because, you could get old used mags for the same gun that you've had before or whatever, but, it definitely kind of helps to kind of gauge where you're at with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Something else that just came to mind is, a lot of these plastic guns, and we can talk about revolvers in a minute, but a lot of these plastic guns, there's a lot of guys that had wood burning kits and decided to do their own stippling.
Yeah.
There might be a deal to be had there if the stippling is completely trash. But I would be wary about some of those tactical guys deciding to do their own work because they could have warped the grip. They could have cut the trigger guard too far. They could have made some drastic future problems to that firearm. So just be kind of wary about that and use your best judgment.
Yeah, that's a great point. Nick, do you have anything to add?
The only way that I judge how much a firearm has been shot is how many holsters does it come with.
Of course you think of it that way.
That's a good way, though.
Yeah. If it doesn't come with at least 3 holsters when I buy a handgun, the guy never used it.
Yeah.
I guess that's a good barometer for sure.
That really isn't a bad perspective.
That's just the way I look at it.
Well, and
that's awesome.
You bring up a pretty good point too about, accessories and stuff that you might be getting with it. Maybe the gun isn't in necessarily the best condition or it has been shot a lot, but you get maybe 4 or 5 magazines with it, or you get, a holster or 2 with it or something like that. There might be some ancillary benefits that you might get, if somebody's getting rid of a firearm. Because let's say if it's a Glock or whatever, let's say it's like a standard Glock 17 or something like that, and you've got maybe 5 magazines to go with it. And you've already got a Glock 19 or something like that at home. That's a fair amount of mags that you're money up on.
Yeah. I
would say at least.
I agree. And I mean, all those things add up. And, you mentioned magazine springs, all that stuff can be replaced too. Any components, it used to be a lot easier to get components. But any of that stuff is fixable.
Right.
And you shouldn't be too scared to jump on a deal if, don't be scared if something's broken because it can be fixed. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
It took me forever to get that out.
That's okay. But yeah, I mean, I think you bring up a good point too about, being asking to disassemble it and, or at least field strip it. If somebody is wary about you field stripping their firearm, then that might be a good sign to walk away. What do you guys think?
Maybe. But maybe not. Maybe that person just has no clue of your ability, which is fine too. Because if you pull apart his gun and you can't get it back together and then you said, oh, never mind, I don't want it. I mean, I'd be pissed if that was me.
Sure. Well, and then maybe what you can do then is you can ask them to field strip it, and just so you can kind of look at the components and see what you've got, what you're working with.
Yeah, maybe.
And obviously it's different compared to an AR as opposed to a Glock or another, handgun like that. But if we're going revolvers, obviously it's pretty easy to, just open the cylinder and see what's kind of going on in there.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and when it comes to buying used revolvers, that could be a whole different animal.
Yeah.
So there are some revolvers that I probably would not buy used. Maybe like a Taurus. Not to bag on Taurus, but I know some of their older problems had some pretty serious issues. And there's some other really unknown name revolvers out there that I just wouldn't buy. I'm not saying that Taurus is a bad gun. They make some good products, but if it's one of their old revolvers, like if it's 20 years old, maybe pass on it. But if we're talking Smiths or Rugers, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But there's some quick ways to lose a lot of money. And most revolver guys, if they're buying revolvers, they understand that market and they know what they're looking for.
For sure.
But if it's your first revolver and you're not quite sure, I mean, first of all, pick it up. If you're looking at a Colt and it's a Python, just buy it. But if you pick up a Colt and maybe the grips are broken, and the hammer's kind of dinged up, and there's some slop in the cylinder, the only thing that really scares me is the cylinder. Some of that stuff can be fixed, but with your big name brand guns, it's probably going to be a little bit more money. So make sure it's a good deal. Grips and that kind of thing, you can find them all over the internet. So don't be worried about the cosmetic stuff.
Right.
But if it's a cylinder slop, or if you're pulling the hammer back and there's something really funky feeling to it, there might be some internal injuries, or honestly, it might even just be a broken mainspring. So it's kind of it's a little bit harder for me because I don't really dig into revolvers that much.
Sure.
I only have one now. I've sold pretty much everything else I have that way, but.
Well, I would say just do your research on the specific gun that you're looking for, and you can kind of you can look online to see what problems that people, have or don't have, or common issues to look out for. And that can be for any gun except, or in addition to revolvers. It's not always just revolvers. You can find common problems for all kinds of guns.
Yeah.
So,
and the revolver market is really interesting because usually, like I say, the revolver guys, they're kind of more in tune with what's valuable and what's not and what deals are out there. So if you have a friend that's collecting revolvers, like my buddy that works for that big box store,
right?
Don't be scared to talk to him. Say, hey, what do you think about this? Maybe if you can get some pictures, whatever, and have them walk through it with you, because I really think there's going to be some good deals with revolvers coming up in the next 5 or 10 years, as long as we can buy and sell guns.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's some really cool revolvers out there that are worth pretty serious amounts of money.
Yeah, that's true. So, well, let's say that, you've checked out this gun and everything looks good and you're ready to buy it. What's the next step after that?
Well, if you've made the connection and you like what you do, or like what you see, me personally, I don't see anything wrong with maybe having a bill of sale written up.
Yeah,
some
100%.
people may be uncomfortable with that, but as a buyer, that could really save you. If the gun's stolen and you don't have a bill of sale and you're in possession of a stolen gun, that's a felony, and it's going to be really expensive to fight your way out of that hole. But if you have some kind of a proof, and take a picture of the person's driver's license that you're buying it from,
that sounds illegal.
Is it?
I'm pretty sure you're not allowed to do that.
Well,
okay.
I believe what you can do, though, is you can have them write down their driver's license number, or write down their, even better, write down their concealed carry firearm number.
Yeah. Well, I would never tell you to do something illegal, and I apologize.
Steve, for shame.
That's why Steve's not a lawyer and doesn't give legal advice.
Yeah, we are. None of us are lawyers, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, for what it's worth. I repent. I apologize.
But no, a bill of sale is definitely, I would say, a good thing. If you really are worried about it, require that, the person buying from you does have a concealed carry license. I think in a lot of places,
I would highly recommend that.
In a lot of places, you're going to see, that private sale is going to require a concealed carry permit, because then they know that's a good way to know that somebody's already kind of been through the system and been checked out, and you don't really have that much to worry about selling them a firearm.
And make sure Make sure the name they give you and the name that's on the permit is the same.
Yeah, that's true too.
I also go back to this: if you're not a good judge of character and judge of the person you're talking to see if they're telling you the truth, don't sell them a gun. Take it to the store. Like if you need a driver's license number and a concealed weapons permit copy and all, just go to the store and pay the $25 and have the background stuff.
We'll do the paperwork at the store. We've done that before.
And if the person's not willing to do that, then don't sell them your stuff, and maybe they don't need it as much as they wanted it. Like if I really wanted something, it would be worth the $20 or the trip to this or meeting at the gun store. Whatever, it wouldn't be a big deal to me. If I'm legal to buy something, it's not a big deal for me to go fill out the paperwork, especially if the seller is covering the fee.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point to bring up, is that I think a lot of people don't realize is that you can perform a private party sale at a gun store if you're not comfortable or confident in selling somebody a firearm in a parking lot or at a private sale or whatever. You can go to a gun store and make that happen.
Yeah, like I said, we've done it at the store. I've personally ran that paperwork, so it can be done. And don't let a gun store tell you that it can't be done. Yeah,
if that's the case, then just go to a different gun store.
So I look at it this way. Once you've done that, if you've gone through a gun store, you've met the person, now you've vetted that person, right? So now the next time that they come around or you have something for sale and you talk to them, now you don't have that awkward feeling, right? Because all that person you've already had interaction with. You're probably now friends with them on Facebook. You follow them on Instagram. You know what they have going on. You probably wouldn't have had a beer with them at this point. Like, now you're friends. Now you don't have to do that again.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the same thing with buying guns too.
Yeah. So that's exactly how I got started in this entire industry, was meeting people in parking lots, selling holsters. I bought a bunch of handguns. I sold some rifles. Like I did that for a couple of years, and now a majority of the people that approach me about selling used handguns or used guns, they've done some sort of a deal with me in the past, and I would have no problem buying or selling from. There's also a few people that are on my radar that I wouldn't sell guns to.
I'm right here.
That's only because your wife told me if I sold guns to you that you couldn't be on the show anymore.
Oh, man. Yeah, you got to watch out, Steve.
I'm not too scared.
So, well, I think that about kind of wraps it up. I mean, like we said, that hopefully we'll be able to buy guns private party, from here on out. But it's just one of those things that you might want to get into it and learn about it sooner rather than later, because it might not be for the foreseeable future,
Yeah, and right now is an important time to call your representative, and even if they're not voting on that bill, they have other people's ears too. So make your beliefs heard and known. It's important.
Yeah,
because it's quickly slipping away. Well,
and also, talk to and if you can, donate money to the firearms rights groups that you follow and that you like, and they do a lot of and have the connections that do a lot of the work and have a lot of the connections that we might not necessarily be privy to as normal citizens. So
it's extremely important right now.
Very much so. So but yeah, I think that kind of covers it. Do you guys have anything to add?
I don't think so. Just go with your gut. Like we've said a couple times already through this episode, if it doesn't feel right, don't do it. If you don't want to buy or sell to a gun to a person that just get a weird feeling, just go with that gut feeling. It's better safe than sorry.
That goes more than just with the person that you're buying or selling to or from. If you get a bad feeling about the gun and you're like, I just don't know if this is the right thing, just don't buy it. I mean, I've done that before, and then had someone else buy the gun, and then they're like, "Oh man, this thing's a piece of shit," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad I passed on it."
Yeah.
Like if you don't feel right, just don't do it.
Yeah. Usually that gut instinct is accurate.
Yeah, 100%.
Like if you're looking if you're looking at something and you're like, oh man, I don't know what that is, like, it's not, the gun's not anything special, like it's not a deal that you'll never come across again, and you're like, oh, I don't know why that looks the way that it does, just hold off and wait until you either get clarification or a better like deal comes around.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, don't be scared to walk.
I think that's the big takeaway, is that don't be afraid to walk away from the deal. Unless unless you've signed something, but even then, if you've signed something, you can usually back out of it, in terms of firearm stuff. But don't be afraid to walk and just use your gut instinct. If something seems sketchy, then it might be. And I think we've talked about it before. It's kind of better safe than sorry in that regard. So.
Absolutely.
When it comes to buying used stuff, dude, I've drove 6 hours to Salt Lake to buy a piece of equipment, got there, looked at it. It didn't look like the pictures. I looked around it. I was like, I'm going to pass. And I got in my truck and I drove back with nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sometimes you might need to do that. So
nothing but a lunch.
Yeah. Yeah. And an adventure. But I think you also do learn a lot going on, I guess, adventures, for lack of a better term, and being able to, learn and kind of learn how kind of private sales go and how, what to expect, what to look for. It's kind of gaining experience, I guess.
Yep.
So, well, cool. Well, I think we'll close it out for this one. If you have any questions for us, maybe anything we didn't cover, let us know. podcast@iishooting.com, or you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Range Minded Podcast. And, we always appreciate you listening. And, we'll talk to you next time.
Yep. Be safe.
Sounds good, guys.
And, well, take somebody shooting if you can.
Well, I decided to omit that because most people can't buy ammo right now.
Yeah.
But if you have the ammo and you have the means, take somebody shooting.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll leave it at that. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next time.
All right. See you guys.
Thanks for listening to Range Minded. Find us online at Range Minded Podcast on Facebook, or send us an email at podcast@iishooting.com. We're always happy to get feedback, episode suggestions, whatever you want to send us, really. And be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and pretty much wherever else you get your podcasts from. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.